I have a lot. Like, that used to be my thing. I used to collect jerseys. This is actually the guy who wore this jersey. He played 2 games for the Capitals, and that's all.
Nice.
That's the only 2 NHL games he ever played, and he was a tough guy. His name is Mel Angelstad.
I don't even know him.
Yeah, he's a firefighter in Detroit now. So.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
So just burn down a building and he'll come running.
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. Maybe. The firefighter response time is cool. The police response time is not cool, from what I understand. So he's okay. Fire, cool. Police,
he's in Detroit, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's like an hour wait time.
I was gonna say, I feel like if they had some sort of like mechanized police officer, in Detroit, like a robotic cop.
You're talking crazy now,
like
man.
Something like that.
1994,
right?
Or whatever year that movie came out.
The best thing about it is the cop cars in the first RoboCop. They're Taurus SHOs. I'm a big Yamaha junkie, so that's actually not a Ford engine. It's a Yamaha engine in that it's a 3-liter V6 that's just a machine. That thing can just go forever.
I don't know about those cars. Interesting.
Oh, dude, the thing was fast. I've owned 3 of them.
Oh, really?
A Gen 1, Gen 2, and a Gen 3.
Oh man, look at you.
Yeah, I used to be a car junkie. Then I got married and had kids, and fuck that.
a lot of things go by the wayside. All that disposable income stuff.
And if you shoot the shred with 7-inch spikes, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Geoff. Erik Hall returns to talk about 9-inch nails.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to be back in the podcast game. It's been a while, and it's cool. It's cool to be back, and glad to do it. Always good to talk some music, especially 9 Inch Nails. So,
yeah, I'm pumped too. This is one of my favorite bands of all time.
Yeah, it's funny. I was kind of in a 9 Inch Nails kick over the summer, and like it was really. I mean, it's been influential in my music for a long time, but really like kind of informed the way I was writing that for the EP I released in like a year ago or so. So it's funny. I was just thinking like, man, I would love to like discuss the whole discography one day about 9 Inch Nails. So it's funny that this is all transpired because it's like a premonition.
And then you said, "Wait, I know some guys."
Yeah, like,
who do that exact thing.
Somebody had a podcast. Yeah, somebody made use of that theme.
I think I'm going to throw it at Erik first. Tell us about 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah, and I have quite a bit. There's some significant moments that I would say, personally and musically that have kind of revolved around 9 Inch Nails that maybe seem more important to me now, especially at the time, but even more so now. I just know that one of the guys that I played music with when I was in high school, a really killer guitar player who does all kinds of music now. He's got multiple projects out that I was, always trying to gain influence from and knowledge from guitar-wise. He played bass in a band I was in high school, and I had never really listened to 9 Inch Nails. I knew of them. I think everybody knew of them, and I was in middle school or so, beginning high school when I really started to hear them. But it was nothing I really ever dug too far into. And I know my buddy, this my friend Bill, he would just always mention it, and he would always wear 9 Inch Nails shirts, and it would be something he would always play. And he was the guy that I knew that always had the nice recording gear, and he's he's an audio engineer by trade these days essentially. So he always had all the nice stuff, and I can see his influence from Trent Reznor now musically, and then being able to do everything on his own. The specific moment for me when I was like, holy shit, was the first track on the album. And I'm so bad with album name or track names. What's the first song? What's the first
Somewhat
title
Damaged.
of that first song? Yeah, I that's one thing I was that way on the He Is Legend episode. I'll be that way again here. Track titles, I'm terrible. But he told me to buy it. He said, you got to buy the Fragile. You got to hear it. And I remember that was the day he bought a Tarantula. Side note. So there's a personal anecdote, but and he named his. I said you should probably name your tarantula Trent based on the scenario we're in. He did, and it still is named that. But I just remember hearing that first couple chords through the on the acoustic, and how that song was like. It sounded so heavy, but it just kept building and building and building and building to this like fucking chaotic sound. But it was still so produced, and it just really grabbed me. So that was kind of the first time I was like. Wow, this is something I need to really listen to. And I spent a lot of time with that album, The Fragile, based on that moment specifically. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, I know Trent kind of worked his way into making some studio time by working after hours on his stuff in the studio that he was working at. So I know a little bit of the historical stuff, and that's inspirational because he was just doing his own thing, and it always kind of has been his own thing until now. So
yeah, he was a janitor at the studio.
Yeah, so that's my connection to Nine Inch Nails really is with my friend Bill, and him showing me that album and forcing me to buy the Fragile, and hearing that for the first time, and just kind of always being around it, and then finally it just clicked, and ever since then it's been nothing but awesomeness mostly.
Being an ignorant teenager who is learning to play guitar and an even more ignorant child, the first time I heard Nine Inch Nails, didn't know it was one guy. Didn't figure out until later. This is what happens when Trent Reznor plays music with other people and decides he can do it better by himself.
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Talking about their his first album, Pretty Hate Machine, essentially was like, no, I don't want studio musicians. I want to play everything myself. I have a vision, and I'm going with it. And it actually became a bit of a challenge for him to initially get signed because he was, so steadfast on that he was not going to allow a record company come in and tell him, no, you got to play with a bunch of other people. He's like, no, I'm doing this myself. And he finally was able to get on. I can't even remember what Pretty Hate Machine is on.
I think it's TVT, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I just remember that because I think Seven Dust had an album on TVT for some reason. I don't know why it's in my head. Maybe they did. Their first album. I don't know. That's the only thing I know about TVT was those two facts.
Talk about a game changer.
Oh, absolutely. Very much so.
This, I didn't hear this in '89 when it came out.
I was 4. When you think about it like that, you're like, well, yeah, I was not listening to this album.
Not an excuse.
Oh no,
right. I should have been. My parents really dropped the ball then.
Yeah.
No, I was in the double digits, so I should have been listening to it.
I'm a young dude, man. You guys make me feel young.
No, I'm the old fart here.
Geoff was in his early 40s whenever that album dropped.
You got the first 4 right.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't hear it till Broken.
Okay.
And I went backwards. And I had a friend of mine that was really into industrial music in general. He was a huge Ministry fan at the time, and he introduced this to me. His name's Michael Griffin. I don't know if I haven't been in touch with him for probably 25 years, so I don't know if he's even still on this earth. But if he's listening, that's a shout out to him because, my God, this is the most important band outside of the Beatles in my life.
This was the band that my parents wouldn't let me listen to whenever I was younger. So there's a certain fascination with that. There was a period in my life where I was only allowed to listen to Christian music. So instead of Nine Inch Nails, I was more in the telling people that, oh, Nine Inch Nails is okay, but that Circle of Dust Clank stuff that's out there is way better, and that stuff is still good.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's one of the rare exceptions whenever I tell a story like that. Usually I find out that the bands that I loved were trash, but in that case, I actually did all right.
Yeah, I was going to say you chose well.
With the industrial rock and metal stuff, but I was always curious about Nine Inch Nails. I know they used to play Closer on the radio all the time.
Yeah, that's how I always heard it too, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they still do, but I could tell you that song, I was listening to the radio one day, and this is well after the song's expiration date, and it comes on and I'm listening to it. I'm like, wow, this is really cool or whatever. And my dad fucking walks in. And it's literally the worst fucking song your parent could walk in on you listening to, because it was literally just I want to fuck you like an animal. And you're like, oh shit. Yeah, Dad, this just came on. I was going to come tell you, about it. But,
you couldn't just change the channel yourself, son?
Yeah, I was going to tell you about it, that this sounded really bad. How do I get this Vengeance Rising tape to play? That's what I was trying to do. And then this came on, but, That was my whole curiosity with the band is, it was so forbidden for me. A lot of bands from this era were, and this was so forbidden and I couldn't tell anybody that I liked it. And then I had a buddy of mine named Chris. He dubbed me a copy of The Downward Spiral.
Ooh.
And also Pretty Hate Machine. I was pretty much good to go. And I remember this was definitely those tapes. I would put a label on the tape that said Worship Volume 5 or Sandy Patty, and I used to have it's so funny I still have a notebook in my room where I have a key that's like, Worship 4 is 9 Inch Nails.
That's awesome.
Insert name of worship person in the 90s. That was code for Korn, or like all that stuff. And so 9 Inch Nails though really stood out to me because they were the most different kind of band that I listened to, and I didn't know words like industrial or like electronic music or anything like that. It was just hard hitting, especially that stuff on Pretty Hate Machine was just so hard hitting, like in your face, aggressive rock, and that just really pulled me in. And I've been pretty much in that pocket ever since. Although now I don't have to.
You don't have to hide it.
I don't have to listen to the shit on cassette anymore. Although I still do sometimes.
I'd say, just from like you said, it's kind of, you've been in that pocket ever since. And I think before this, I wasn't really listening to anything electronic or industrial or anything like that, like you guys have all said. But I think I still love electronic music, even stuff that's just strictly electronic. House music, all kinds of stuff. I really like music that has that flavor to it. But I gotta say, it's probably all stems from hearing, even especially this first album, because it was very, very industrial, very, relied on programming and all kinds of stuff that I still love to do, and my own music and what I hear and what I appreciate in other people's music. So, yeah, this kind of, even if I got probably more into it years after I even initially heard it. And it made more sense to me, but still, even then, it's kind of just sunk its teeth into me. That's a foreshadowing pun of a future 9 Inch Nails album we'll talk about if you
yeah.
will.
Oh yeah.
but yeah, this is just a hugely important band to so many people, and a genre in itself, and just music in general.
Yeah, it really it busted it open. Industrial had been around for a long time. You have bands like Ministry and Killing Joke have been there doing it for almost 10 years before Trent Reznor showed up with 9 Inch Nails. And there's a huge. I know there was a big influence for Trent from Al Jorgensen from Ministry, and that's part of the reason why I did it. I always have fun, and I strongly recommend everybody go do it. And maybe we'll put it in the show notes. Trent Reznor was in a real prominent cover band in the '80s in the Cleveland area, and they showed up on public access television. One time, and they did a Boy George cover, and everybody needs to see that.
I haven't seen it, so that's on my list.
Yeah, it is epic for all the wrong reasons. And you're just and
those are the right reasons.
Well, that's the great thing is when I saw that video, and then you go to Pretty Hate Machine, and you're like, that's the same dude. And it just lets you know, man, all that shit that he had in his head was just light years beyond what everybody else was doing at the time.
Yeah, really. He took a genre, like you said, that existed and just, I say, made it accessible. It still has all the elements of the darkness, the grittiness, the programming, the industrialness, if that's a word. But then he made it accessible to somebody who, from a song structure standpoint, where it works on the radio or in the context of an album. I don't know. Trent Reznor's a bad motherfucker, just ultimately.
I would say him and Dave Gahan from Depeche Mode. He was like a darker, more broody Dave Gahan, and because they're both good looking dudes. They're able to sell on looks as well as substance.
Yeah, that's a huge part. Ultimately, it is a huge part of it.
Yeah, it really is.
I loved Depeche Mode too, and that's probably. All that stuff came to me after I was probably interested in hearing electronic music and some aspect of rock and roll. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just a bad dude.
You guys knew it was all about that sex appeal.
It really was.
Hey, man, yeah, that's true. That's why I'm behind the microphone if I'm doing anything.
There you go.
I'm not on the screens.
Well, before we continue the Trent Reznor drinking game, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher. So if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We love 5-star reviews on Discography Discussion.
How much do we love them?
Well, we love them quite a bit, and part of that is just because it makes me feel good personally. But beyond that, 5-star reviews are really helpful for a podcast because everything in the world, at least on the internet, is controlled by algorithms. And those algorithms look at subscriber numbers, download numbers. But one of the biggest things it looks at is how many reviews a podcast has. If a podcast gets a lot of good reviews, that allows us to be recommended to other people like yourself that have not yet heard this podcast. So that's the only reason that we're always begging for it. But we appreciate all the people that have reviewed us.
What about algorithms? What do you think about that?
Well, that's a pretty controversial subject. And, I mean, from the inventor of the internet himself, you know,
you know what? How selfish of him even to take hold of a technological term like that. And just, I mean, it's all, you know what? It's all coming together. I never thought about that until just now. It's a conspiracy.
It's a huge conspiracy.
The algorithm.
Yes.
You know who started that conspiracy? Man Bear Pig.
I was going to say either him or Alex Jones. I don't know.
Wow.
Anyways, yeah, I went there. Sorry.
It's okay.
Didn't think I'd say that name on here.
That's all right.
You guys are hipping me to some cool shit. I got Trent and Reznor covering a Boy George song, Man Bear Pig. I got my night planned.
We got an email from Jeremy Prince. Hey guys, still listening to the Fear Factory episode. Love the idea of an end of the year wrap up. Would love it if you added a top albums of the year for each of you as well.
We'll do that. All of it.
Every single bit of it.
We had a lot of comments on Facebook concerning the Fear Factory episode. Mike Newton says, oh man, okay, here we go. I was very excited for the episode, and I'm still glad you guys did it, although there was so much I disagreed with. Granted, Fear Factory is one of my favorites, so that makes me biased, and that's cool too. The albums I thought you guys would hate, you didn't, and vice versa. But I'm also trying to take into consideration the fact that you guys cram listens in. So I'd imagine that Genexus or Mechanized wouldn't get a lot of love because they're at the very end of the cram. Those two albums were monsters and a real good balance between who Fear Factory used to be mixed with, who they grew into, and the Digimortal Transgression era. It was a great balance, and I could happily compromise with. To me, it was almost like a rebirth of the band. Where they go from here, who knows, because it is in fact a clusterfuck of rotating drummers, bass players, which surprisingly enough doesn't affect the sound too much. Either way, you guys have yours and I have mine, and it's all good because it was a great episode in the end. Thanks for covering them, gentlemen. Let's see what's next.
That was quite the mouthful.
That was quite the mouthful. Well, he'd been going for weeks, like, when's the Fear Factory episode? Yo, where's the Fear Factory episode? Yo, where's it at?
Yeah, he was excited.
And so I think he had to, really think out a lot of that stuff. Chris McCoy says, I heard my name on this episode. And now you've heard your name on this episode.
This is just going to keep going on and on into infinity.
Yeah.
Snowball. Chris
Freeman said it is possible for Fear Factory to be someone's favorite band, in reference to Joe saying that Fear Factory is no one's favorite band. Obsolete is one of my favorite albums. One of the best ways to experience the album is to listen to the Roach Coach podcast episode where the hosts act out the story of the concept album. And then Nick Barrett said, just listen to the podcast. All the drums on the Industrialist were programmed. Everything after is about 50-50 programmed and live. So that is good information because there was a little bit of debate about that during the episode.
Well, that's the Trent Reznor ratio, right? It's performed and then it's programmed.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting to watch his drummer. I think his name's like Elon Rubin, I think his name is. I've watched something recently, watching him show how he plays those songs live, and it's really interesting how it's incorporated into a live set and how he plays it. And it's almost like, were you thinking of having a drummer play this or not? You wonder about that with program stuff sometimes. So it's interesting to watch him do that. So yeah, like you guys said, 50-50 or so.
One more, we got a tweet from AC. Thoroughly enjoyed this episode. You nailed it on the head when you said Fear Factory is a grab bag of elements. I was very much in sync with Geoff on this episode. Obsolete being one of his favorite albums, his not sure why love for Genexus, and did I hear something about liking Flaw?
Oh, he loves Flaw.
I am totally not a closet fan when it comes to Flaw. I'm with
you.
I'm 110% out in the open. I love Flaw.
1989, pretty hate machine.
Oh man, this was a motherfucker of an album. I'm like even scared to talk about it because like there are some things in the world that are sacred, and it's hard to, it's hard to just give some asshole's opinion on it. But this is, by far a shocking aggressive, piss and vinegar kind of album. Now, when I say that, I'm usually talking about like hardcore bands. But in this case, this was a very different type of angst. It was different than what I was used to. And what I just like about it is just how fucking evil it sounds at times. Like, just so damn spiteful. That's kind of like really what attracts me to the band, even to this day, even going back that far, is just that, like, this is the late 80s, but this sounds like some mid-90s pissed off shit.
I am still shocked this day when I look at this record and it was released in 1989. Does everybody else remember that time in the 90s where insert song by Nine Inch Nails would come on the radio and it sounded like it was recorded in 1996?
Yeah, it was like it was so advanced for its time.
It all ran together. It wasn't bad. It was an example of a band that it was okay for it to be a playlist every now and then. The greatest hits were on the radio, all of them. It wasn't just play the same song over and over again.
Yeah, that's a band, like when I hear a song of theirs on the radio, even still today, I don't mind that it's on the radio. I'm not like, man, I'm so sick of hearing Head Like a Hole or Terrible Lie. Like, those songs just are badass.
You will never hear that come out of my mouth.
Yeah, to me, that means it transcended so many things, and the fact that it was on the radio, yet it still appealed to, different types of people who like music that might not have been on the radio. And you can still hear it today on whatever, name your local rock radio station that'll have that on the playlist, and you turn it up.
And it still sounds modern.
Yes, it fits. I mean, it's almost like, it's just Trent being Trent in many aspects of that statement.
I like the fact that he had that vision and he didn't waver from it, even under all the pressure.
Right.
When he was trying to get signed. I mean, because we would not have Nine Inch Nails of now if he had not stuck to his guns. I really believe that. So I'm happy that we have this album. It's one of my favorites. I mean, well, there's going to be a lot of times I'm going to say that throughout this discography that it's one of my favorites because
we call that the Geoff rule at Discography Discussion. How many favorites do you have? It depends on what episode it is.
I'm the worst. Like, I have a hard time. Like, if somebody said, like, give me your top 5, I'd be here for like the next 46 hours trying to figure out how to whittle it down. I don't know if I could do it.
Geoff uses algebra. He turns top 5 into top 9.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I've sat down myself, even in my own head, like, what is my top 5 albums? Depends on the day.
It really does.
I can't narrow it down.
Well, what would be your guys' top songs on Pretty Hate Machine?
Oh,
Terrible Lie and Head Like a Hole, in that order.
Yeah, definitely Terrible Lie. I love that little synth line, do 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 do. I just like it's stuck in my head for the rest of my life.
It's creepy too, and that's what I like about it. Like, the first time I heard it, I was terrified. Now I can't get it out of my head.
That's the thing about all of his stuff throughout every album he's ever done. It's melodic, yet it's very eerie, and it's the way he puts those two together has always been so impressive to me.
I'd have to go with Terrible Lie, and then I'm actually going to kind of take a left turn, and it's part of the reason why I like a lot of Trent's stuff is the fact that he can do that and make it viable and relevant, and that is something I can never have.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just the dude and essentially like a piano and a little atmosphere floating in behind it, and it's so beautiful and haunting at the same time. And I love shit like that. Like, whenever you can get away with it, freaking do it. And he pulls it off and comes out better than anybody else on the other side.
Yeah, I've always liked Down in It too.
Yeah, all the singles that made it to the radio, they're all good.
Yeah,
they're all on the radio for a reason. It's because they were really good.
AKA 75% of all the songs by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of Ghosts.
Right.
We'll get to Ghosts.
Yeah, that's what, if you include the extras, that's 37
Do we have
tracks.
to? Do we have to get to Ghosts?
Yeah, we do, because I actually like that album.
It has its place.
I mean, it's a thing that exists. But anyway, yeah, this album was for sure like one of the best you could get in that decade. I mean, Ministry had some cool shit then too, but there was something very strikingly modern about this. Very ahead of its time, very eerie, very angsty, and so influential to even not just the electronic influence bands, but I feel like to kind of some of the heavier bands in general that were coming out around that time. I think they pulled a huge influence from Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah, I think one of the things, this is like the album that made the hard break from industrial having really, really strong connections to new wave. This is the one where you're like, okay, if you can't really say this is as new wavy as a lot of the other stuff, this is just, it's too damn haunting to be new wave. And if it is new wave, it's going to be like the Joy Divisions of the world or the Cures of the world that really aren't. They kind of get grouped in there, but I wouldn't call them as new wavy as a lot of the other stuff, like Human League and stuff like that.
Right, I would agree with that.
Well, it's like Joe's been saying, is there some sort of like trend that people don't know about that's just subconscious, where everybody was trying to keep new wave alive as long as humanly possible?
Oh, and I'm one of those. I love new wave. It's one of my favorite genres of music. I mean, I have no bones about that. But this was just something else in its own element, and I can't believe that that this album back then sold in the millions. I didn't even realize that. I was like, holy shit! I thought I was a cool kid because I found this and nobody else did. Nope. Yeah, there's lots of other dumbass kids like me that thought they were the only cool ones. Because this one and the self-titled Rage Against the Machine album, like those two, were so far ahead of their times in that era. Because I think that came out, 90 or whatever it was for Rage Against the Machine. So like those two albums, like back to back, you're like, holy cow! It just changed the face of quote unquote alternative music.
We're going to break a couple rules tonight.
Oh, I'm going to break some rules, break some fingers. Let's go.
Is that a pun intended there, Joe?
It is now.
All right.
With Nine Inch Nails, there are several official releases. How many versions are there of The Downward Spiral? That depends on how many remixes you want to count. So for this discography, we are going with the original release of a record. And that is the album for the purposes of this episode.
Fair enough.
The second rule that we're breaking is for Geoff's sake. We're going to talk about Broken and Fixed, both of which are EPs, but are essentially one album.
Yeah, more Broken than Fixed. Broken is so seminal and so important, and the whole middle finger to the establishment is essentially what Broken is. I know, Eric, you know a little bit of backstory about how this came about. You want to drop a little insight on us?
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, and jump in whenever I go off track or I'm wrong, but from what I know, it was an EP that was released kind of on his own, not really with any approval, you might say, but he was having a hard time with his label putting out Pretty Hate Machine, and this slipped through there, and it was something he just wanted to put out and kind of middle finger type thing to the industry establishment, his label, like, I'm going to keep doing it my way, which he has continued to do his whole career. So this was kind of a foreshadowing of the way he was going to do things forever. And there's some jams on this thing, man. I mean, just Wish alone, I know was a Grammy winning song. As it was a Grammy winning song, right? It wasn't just nominated.
No, it actually won the 35th Grammy Awards.
Yeah. But I mean, that, Happiness and Slavery, I mean, those two songs to me are killer. And I remember hearing, this is probably before I was even really into Nine Inch Nails. I mean, I remember hearing Wish was covered by Linkin Park in a live setting, and I heard that, and I didn't know who it was, and then the pieces started to come together. But I mean, that song was pretty important from what I can tell, and it wasn't even on the debut that debut album, and he kind of put it on his own volition, and that's how good it was.
Yeah, the only other band I can think of at this time frame that was that had an EP that just completely blew up like this was Alice in Chains.
Jar of Flies.
So that's those two are. If we ever do Alice in Chains, I can guarantee you that will be an exception to the rule as well, just because of how important it is. And I just really wanted to get Broken in mainly because of Wish and the recognition that it got. And it just shows you that if you stay true to your artistic vision and you don't give in to the record label executives, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. Because, I mean, look at Trent and what he's become. And it's mainly because he's stood steadfast by what he believes in, and he believes in his art. And it's great. The one other thing I got to have a little fun with this is, Physical? The writer of that song is not Trent Reznor, it's Adam Ant.
Yeah.
And God, did I love Adam Ant back in the day. So I had to have a little fun on that. But Physical, Suck, both of those are just great. That's like it's an EP, but it's like a half hour long. So it's almost full length, and that's the other reason why I was like, okay, we can kind of bend the rules a little bit because we're damn near close to being a full album.
A lot of times when you think EP, you think it's like, here's what they were doing before they really got signed and got the money behind them. So this was more like, this, if you listen to this on its own, I think it stands alone. It doesn't seem like it's something that he was like, well, here, here's some stuff I'm working on, type of EP type of deal. Like, no, here's 8 songs. You
mentioned the artistic vision. Trent Reznor is the poster boy for artistic vision. He wanted to do his music his way so badly that he made a solo album in the 80s when it wasn't easy to do that.
Yeah.
For years, Nine Inch Nails was the band that wanted you to bootleg their live shows. They wanted you to mix up and mash up their music back when DJs were really starting to get noticed for doing that sort of thing. Geoff mentioned the 90s and not letting go of new wave. We'll get to it. Even into the early 2000s, when Nine Inch Nails became an independent band. The whole reason that Trent put that in the public was to kind of give the middle finger to the record labels, to say, I'm big enough by myself, I don't need your help. We found out later that wasn't the case, and he actually rescinded that opinion. We'll get to that.
Well, how baller was it, though, on this EP? He wins a Grammy, and the EP is there as a middle finger to the industry, only to turn around and be fucking praised by that very industry.
Yeah, it is pretty funny.
Like, the punk rocker in me is all like, what the fuck is that shit? But it's actually pretty awesome. If you really lay it out like that like the industry was like, well, you hate our guts, but we fucking love you, man.
It was one of those things he could not be denied. That's really what it came down to. Whenever you have somebody of that type of brilliance, of whatever field it is, and you are getting resistance, it doesn't matter whenever you have that quality of material. It's eventually going to shine through. And I'm happy that he did stick to his guns. And so I think we've talked enough about Broken. Thank you, Joe, for letting me break the rules on that one. I appreciate it very much.
It has been a long time since I have been able to talk about bands that define their sound, their genre, their feeling, their tone. I think the last time I got to bring it up was on the Korn episode. There are not very many bands that you know who they are at the start. Whether it's on the radio, on TV, if you're at the concert and you start to hear them play, if you're in the parking lot and you're walking in and you know that Power Man 5000 is on stage because they are playing Nobody's Real. You know, as soon as that synth part in the beginning starts, exactly what's coming. Korn does it with Got the Life. Does anybody in this room not stop what they're doing and listen to the radio when they hear this? You know, as soon as that kick drum happens, that fucking Closer is about to start.
I know to lock my bedroom door. It's about to get real.
With some lotion?
Yeah. It's a perfect song for that.
This is Nine Inch Nails in a nutshell.
Agreed.
If you asked me to define it, wrap it up, and tell me what Nine Inch Nails is, I would give you a copy of Closer and say, listen to that for the next day and a half. If you don't get it, this isn't for you, because this is for everyone. And I don't know why this is for everyone. I don't know anyone that doesn't like Closer.
The context or the subject matter of the song as well, to be so huge based on like what it is saying is such another testament to how good the song is in itself, and how much he transcended from a genre that probably wouldn't have had much, in the way of listenership, to take a genre, turn it into something popular, pop, but still put something out like this and have it on the radio and it just be synonymous with Nine Inch Nails and just alternative in an era. Crazy to me.
That's what I mean about it being so visceral too, like, because it's not like the heaviest music out there. It's not like super fast or in your face, but it's very subtly, like the music is very subtle and artful, I guess. But then the lyrics are so visceral and so cutting that you have to stop everything and be like, what the fuck did he just say? that sort of effect is lost on most bands, most listeners. But in this case, it was the perfect combination of ingredients to keep this whole machine rolling.
Yep.
Yeah, this album shaped my listening habits in high school. It completely, because this came out my freshman year, and I was hooked. I just couldn't. I can't say enough about it. Every single song on this album is good in its own right. Yeah, it's not like a typical, pop album where you pick out the hits, that somebody's definitely designed for radio play. All of this stuff is good. Every last inch of it is just artistic gold. But that's just me. I'm sure there's other people that probably disagree with me. Like, I love Reptile. It's the shit. Not everybody agrees with that.
It bothers me that I'm annoyed for the purposes of this show that I have to change it to Reptile so that the context is conveyed to the listener. I want to just sit here and listen to Closer all night.
You see, that's the other interesting thing. Most of the time when you get a song that it was as popular and still is as popular as Closer, generally people just get tired of listening to it because it gets overplayed. Like, kind of back to what Joe was saying, listening to it for a day and a half, I don't think that song gets old. Ever.
No, it doesn't. Like we were saying, it comes on, you almost just have to turn it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Because you know what's coming and you know that you love it. And even if you say you know exactly what's going to happen, it's nothing you've never heard before, but it still feels like, you're hearing it for the first time. Because in the context of the songs that it's put into a radio playlist on, it still sounds better than that stuff, and look how old it is. Look where it is in its time, in its existence. It still sounds awesome, and it still works. If that came out today, it would be awesome. People would dig it. Maybe not so much in the the world we live in, but
I don't know.
Sonically, it still fits. It would be awesome. I think.
How many people you think have had dirty sex in the back of a car listening to this song? I didn't ask how many guys in the room have had dirty sex in the back of a car.
Put your hand down, Geoff. Put your hand down.
But, it's definitely a fuck song.
Yeah, there you go.
Through and through.
It's a fuck album.
Yeah, it totally is. Like, most people that are listening to this episode would probably fuck to the Downward Spiral.
Yeah.
And if they haven't, they should definitely try.
That's actually kind of one of the only things I put in my notes for this episode on this album was that it's a fuck album. And that's okay. Like, and it's not usually my cup of tea at all. It's like I was born to shit on stuff like that, but like, it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect the artistic integrity. There aren't a lot of bands out there that do basically what I would consider to be their defining work on the second try. Like, he almost nailed it on Pretty Hate Machine, and on this one, he just fucking nailed it. No pun intended. But no, you know what? Fuck it. Pun definitely intended.
Pun accepted.
The one thing I will say before we get too far into the Downward Spiral is that actually somebody that ended up starting another great industrial-ish band left right before the recording of the Downward Spiral, and that is Richard Patrick.
Oh, that's right.
Who went on to create Filter. So I thought I'd throw
Did you guys see that the documentary Hired Gun? That was on Netflix about session guitarist or a touring guitarist. Well, Richard Patrick was in there, and he said that he talked to Trent about it, and Trent told him, you're not going to make any money until you're the guy like me, like you're the guy that's hiring the gun.
Yeah.
So he was like, fuck it.
I remember, because he like sat Trent Reznor down and was like, hey, dude. I feel like I should be getting paid more because like these shows are huge and we're selling tons of merch or whatever. And Trent's like, yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah. I am 9 Inch Nails.
He's like, well, how do I make more money? He's like, well, you have to do what I do.
Yep.
That's the way to do it. I don't even think he was a dick about it. Probably from the way I heard it, I think it was very matter of fact. Like, dude, you have to basically come up with all this shit yourself and then hire dudes like you to go do it.
And that's exactly what he did.
I don't think Richard Patrick, it didn't seem like in that interview he felt like, well, this is bullshit. He was just kind of like, yeah, you know what? You're right. He wasn't a dick about it. And he made a good point and look at Filter.
Yeah, it worked out.
Could you imagine if that conversation was reversed? Like David Lynch called and said, Trent, I want you to make some music for me. And he says, well, David, I think I should be getting paid more. Well, Trent, you're going to have to do what I do. Hire guys like you to do my soundtracks. And then David Lynch would go on to write his own music.
I'm just glad that we got Short Bus at least out of the that conversation between those two people, because I don't know, that album to me was big.
Yeah,
It is big.
That album is something else still to me.
poor Filter though. They didn't have the lasting power
No,
that Nine Inch Nails
They were
has.
so good, though. That needs to be a Patreon episode.
What, Short Bus?
Absolutely.
Take a Picture is a shitty song on an excellent album, which is title of record. That was a fantastic album.
Take a
album,
Picture
yeah.
was that song that I would play for girls whenever I'd take them out places.
Oh, there you go.
I was like,
Dan hadn't discovered Closer yet.
well, it's like,
No, closest for the second date.
I was a good
Now
Christian
check this
boy.
out.
I was a good Christian boy back then. I definitely wasn't putting on fucking Closer whenever we'd go out places. I feel bad for him though, because it'd just be like Zayo, 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 Zayo. Oh, here's this on my sensitive side. This song's called "Take a Picture" by Filter. And like, oh.
I think we all did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
In your mix CD that you made, there was a couple tracks, and then you could show the girls.
Yeah. But for the most part, it's just like, hey, check out this song off of this album called Brainchild, you know?
So does anybody outside of Closer have a favorite song on the Downward Spiral?
I do not. I do not want this as a good song. I'm trying to think of songs that.
You thief. You thief.
Well,
I'm sorry, Jeff. Did Eric steal your third favorite song on the album?
No, that is actually my favorite song on the album. Is I Do Not Want This. Seriously, it really is.
I just like that. I just like that the beat on that song to me is interesting.
Yes, it is.
To me, it's different. It doesn't have like that straightforward four on the floor type thing that you might hear on a Closer.
I'm going to go with March of the Pigs.
Oh, you fuckface. That was mine.
That's right.
Wasn't this recorded in that house? Is that true? In the Tate house, the Tate murder house, or something like that? Did
Yes.
he do something? Did he do the whole album, or just Piggy and March of the Pigs?
There was
Or whatever.
The bulk of it was recorded there. I think there was
That's what
some
I
other
thought.
stuff that floated out elsewhere.
Yeah, that's another thing that he does. That kind of stuff. Just very into the art of it. Like, you're gonna buy that house and record music in there? Like, damn.
Yeah, and he was very. He was very particular about it at the time. I remember him saying something along the lines of, I'm big into history, I'm big into folklore, and that's the reason why I did it. And the drive that it would give me to make music here. He goes, I'm not into that serial killer bullshit. That's not why I bought the house.
Yeah, right.
Because
Yeah.
I remember whenever or put the studio in the house, 'cause I think he was just renting it.
Yeah, I don't think he bought it. Yeah.
And I remember that was a big deal in the 90s. Like, oh my God, he's at the Tate house. Like, this guy's loves serial killers. And he had to come out and say, no. It's just kind of like how we like the last podcast on the left. I mean, it's just like weird, creepy shit. Like, it's interesting. Doesn't mean that you want to become, the material that you're, investigating. I'm going to cheat. There's also one other song I want to mention on this one because it's my favorite cover song of all time, and it's only on the Japanese release of the Downward Spiral. In the rest of the world, you get it on the Crow soundtrack, and that's Dead Souls, which is originally a Joy Division song that he redid, and it is the best cover song of all time. And if you disagree with me, I want to fight you.
So you're saying overall, it's the best cover song?
It's better than Death's Painkiller.
Oh yeah,
Is it better than Johnny Cash's rendition of Hurt?
oh, absolutely. And I know
Is it better than Limp Bizkit's Behind Blue Eyes?
No, that's the
Well,
greatest
everything's
cover.
better than that.
That's the greatest cover song ever recorded.
I actually don't think it's that bad of a cover song, Behind Blue Eyes.
It's not.
I actually enjoy it.
Fred and Company just get kind of a bad rap.
Yeah, they do.
They
Undeservedly
always
so.
do.
because they rap
do
badly.
their thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Was that song overlooked as much as I remember it was? I don't remember anybody really talking about Hurt until Johnny Cash did it.
No. Maybe I'm kind of jaded because in the mid-90s, I was hardcore into the industrial scene, and that song was super popular. And especially here, I know in St. Louis on the local radio station, The Point, it got played nonstop.
I just listened to a podcast with Malcolm Gladwell, Revisionist History. I think he does a podcast, and he started a new podcast with Rick Rubin, and they did an episode together, the very first episode, and they talked about all kinds of stuff. And that this came up, and whether or not Trent Reznor was okay with the cover or how they came about being able to use it. And I remember Rick Rubin saying that he didn't have a problem with him covering it because it was Johnny Cash, and that's totally cool. But he said it was so weird for Trent Reznor to hear somebody else sing about a song that was so emotionally in tune with him that it took him a long time to hear it from somebody else's perspective and understand it. But I mean, it's just a little interesting anecdote from Rick Rubin there.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out because I was a huge fan of Rick Rubin's in the 90s.
Is it weird to anybody else, though, to think about Johnny Cash listening to the Downward Spiral?
No.
I got to imagine Rick Rubin was like, here, play this song. This is an emotional one. You know?
It could be, or it could just be that he was into it. I don't know. Like,
maybe.
It's kind of one of those things that we're just never going to know because we can't ask him,
He did record The Man in Black with One Bad Pig.
Yeah, that's true. He did do that. That's the thing that actually happened.
I've just viewed Johnny Cash as somebody that was able to cross generations. Even with his music, obviously, yes, but I also think his ability to listen and just recognize talent, he was able to do that, and that's part of the reason why Hurt was, I think, something easy for him to cover. Plus, it was he was able to take it and make it his own because he was literally hurting at the time physically.
He should have done Closer.
I need everybody to take 5 seconds and think about what that would have sounded like.
I would love to hear that.
Can you imagine, like, he's like doing the tap, tap, but he's just like beating the acoustic guitar, like bang, bah, bang, bah. That'd be awesome, dude.
It probably would be so badass.
That'd be hilarious if it was on tape. But it's Johnny Cash. He would have made it work, But
let me violate you.
Oh God. Okay, maybe. You let me violate you. You let me penetrate you. Perfect.
I fell into burning
ring of fire after Closer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a prequel.
Gentlemen, we're in this together. 1999, The Fragile.
I'm not going to say it's better than the Downward Spiral because I feel like I can't say that.
Nothing is better than the Downward Spiral.
No.
I would say to me, I don't know if it's better, but to me this was more important. Just in the time that I heard it, this was the first time I was like, it made sense to me. 9 Inch Nails, I got it it totally just changed the way I thought about music. Then and going forward, still today, this album, I listen to it and it's like, there's things on there that are just totally just pieces of music or part of the context of an album. Not so much a song, but just an intro or the way something ends and the way something begins in a track, the way that it all flowed together. To me was, and like I mentioned, the beginning of Somewhat Damaged. The first time I heard that, I remember sitting in my truck with my buddy who just bought a Spider and told me to buy this album. And I remember looking at him going like, oh, this is 9 Inch Nails. And it just was like, this is incredible. So, I mean, to me, this was probably the most important album that they put out, or he put out in terms of, me understanding 9 Inch Nails. And then I'd go back now and then listen to everything else, and that clicked a little bit more. But this album to me is a masterpiece. I might even dare to say that.
Yeah, especially the first album, because it's a double.
Yeah.
So the first album for me was just mind-blowing because I bought this the day it came out in 99, and because I was actually managing a music store at the time, so I got to quote-unquote pre-buy it, so I got to hear it before a lot of other people did, and man, what an amazing album. The Wearing This Together is still probably my favorite song of theirs, actually, which, after as much praise as I was giving everything off the Downward Spiral, that's probably my as far as singles go, that's easily my favorite song from 9 Inch Nails.
The Downward Spiral is the reason people thought 9 Inch Nails was a near perfect band. The Fragile is why they believe it, because it takes everything from the Downward Spiral, does it again, but turns it into one long composition. You now have to sit down and listen to the band in its entirety. You can't just pick out your favorites and listen to those.
Yeah, because if you skip around on this album, there's some singles in here that work on the radio, but I think if you start from the first track on the left disc to the very last track of the right disc, like it's like you if you want to listen to the Fragile, you listen to it all the way through. And that was one of the first times I had that experience as well. I was like, oh, this is a piece of music, kind of not so much like sonically or the way it was written, but just like conceptually, it made sense that way.
You're right, because like we were talking about We're in This Together Now. You actually get like a sample of We're in This Together Now, like a minute before the Wretched ends. So I mean,
oh my God, the Wretched! Oh,
that's a great fucking song.
Oh my God, just like I still sing that song in my head. The part when he says, the clouds will part and the sky cracks open, and God Himself will reach His fucking arm through just to push you down. Like, wow, wow, that's so powerful.
Who hasn't felt like that?
Because you can feel it. Yeah, like, God, I can't make any fucking ground up here, and it's like God Himself reaches His arm through and push me down. And it's like, I mean, I was like a monumental lyric. Wow, to hear somebody say that, like, wow, that is some serious shit.
I like The Day the World Went Away.
Yeah, that's good too.
Oh, great song.
The first disc in particular for me is, or the left disc, I guess is technically what I ought to call it.
Yeah.
Get it right, you fuck.
Right.
Yeah, left. Yeah. 1 and 2. What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. People are like, it's all digital. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Left disc. It's something that I can listen to over and over again. I kind of view the Fragile like I do the White Album for the Beatles.
That's a good comparison.
The first disc of the White Album is a lot like the left disc. It's sonically cohesive, and then things just start to get a little crazy and experimental on the right disc, just like the second disc of the White Album is. And I kind of like that parallel. Although I prefer the left disc, just like I prefer the first album or the first disc from the White Album.
It's where the radio singles can be if you want them to.
Is that my problem? Am I a radio guy?
Yes.
Okay. That sucks. I always thought I was like Mr. Hippy Dippy. I like to listen cover to cover, but
deep cuts, man. But we talked about it earlier. The deep cuts are just as good as the singles. I mean, the singles are just as good as the deep cuts. I mean, they're 9 Inch Nails songs, and if it's good, it's good.
They could have picked any song as a single. Yeah. That had to have been tough because, there was like a team, that decided, what songs were going to be pitched as singles or not.
Yeah.
Well, Team Trent, really.
Yeah, I'm sure they were like,
team.
Is this okay with you, Trent, to put this out?
Yeah.
That's not a single.
Man, I don't know if I want to put that song out as a single. Every day is exactly the same. Whoa, that's a good song title. Let me write that down.
Hang on, guys. I got to write this
I might use this later.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, he had a really hard time recording this album.
Yeah, I remember watching interviews about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, his writer's block and drugs and all that kind of shit just really... He wasn't even sure if this was actually going to happen. He was like driving himself mad trying because he just couldn't get shit on paper. And the fact that somebody, has that problem, and this is what we get whenever he has writer's block. Are you fucking kidding me?
This is his man, I almost didn't get this thing done album. And
and you're like,
I wish I had one of those.
No shit.
It's like the equivalent of, that's a nice outfit. Oh, this old thing?
Yeah, I just threw this together. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so somebody shows up with their Maserati Quattroporte, and you're like, oh, that is an amazing car. Yeah, well, it's not my Bugatti Veyron.
My Bugatti's in the shop.
It's not my downward spiral. Yeah.
Many years went by, and then in 2005 we got With Teeth.
I have a lot of things to say about With Teeth too, because that was, to me, that album again. I don't know what it was. It was really different. I felt like it was maybe a little bit more of this. It got into a sonically different aspect, a little bit more of I don't know how to explain it. I don't know. I feel like at that point, this is when things turned a little bit in terms of the way he was writing.
I agree. I start to get the feeling of this is more when he started getting into the soundtrack kind of feel to his songs.
Yeah, I mean, only that song is it's very poppy. I mean, that to me that song is. But there's a lot of I love this album. I bought this album.
Oh, I did too.
I bought the. This is like old school that I don't even know if they do it anymore. But I think it was Pepsi. They were you buy a 20 ounce and you get a free iTunes credit or whatever. And I bought The Hand That Feeds before the album came out. So I was really, this is kind of when I was really in the Nine Inch Nails, like really deep. I was starting to really go deep into it. So again, this album might not be liked by a lot of people. I think it is, but it's not their favorite. But this came out in a time where it was like, I could buy this on the day it came out for the first time. This is the first Nine Inch Nails album I could do that with, because I found out everything before that after it had come out. So this is when I was like, all right, finally some new Nine Inch Nails. I can go to the store and buy it on Tuesday. You know, so that to me it was an exciting chapter in his musical career there.
It definitely felt different from the previous albums. With Teeth was a record that I listened to, and I didn't hear anything that set it apart by itself. And again, ignorant teenager, I just didn't get it yet. I was close to getting it with The Fragile. This is a record you have to sit down and listen to. But I was still looking for the downward spiral again. So this one kind of missed me at the time.
I think you can go, and I've done it. I do it all the time. But I think I can go from All the Love in the World to Right Where It Belongs, and just go all the way through the album. And I don't feel like I want to skip anything. I feel like it's a solid album in what it does and what he was trying to do with it. It's just straightforward. It's a lot more to the point, I feel like, than some of the other stuff he maybe did with The Fragile. But and I think you're pronouncing it wrong. I think it's pronounced with a teeth. You know, the way he says with teeth on that song, it's like with the teeth.
Got to get the aw on the end.
I'm just saying. I'm sure. I don't know. I would like to know what he was thinking. Like, somebody's probably like, "Well, with teeth doesn't sound that cool." And he's like, well, "How about this?" Yeah, that's it. I don't know. Like, where would he come up with that? But again, to me, that's how he says with teeth, and that's what catches in my mind. But this whole album to me is, I like the way that All the Love in the World stops it towards the end and breaks into this like piano, like really like he changes. You know, the melody of his vocals is really cool to me. You know, I just all of it. And then You Know What You Are, the drums, and that didn't Dave Grohl play those drums? Am I right on that?
He can go.
Did he? I think he did play some drums on this, and I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Yeah, Dave Grohl percussion, drums 2, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. So he played a lot of drums on here. So yeah, that second song, You Know What You Are, that double bass snare, they really, I don't know.
Jeff doesn't like this album
Jeff
anymore.
hates this album now.
I have a extreme hate on for Dave Grohl.
See, I'm that way about the Foo Fighters. I like Dave, but the Foo Fighters, I'm not.
Dave is a dick. So he might be talented, but he's an asshole.
But I never see that, though. It's always the opposite of that. That's always what gets on the Facebook viral videos.
You are obviously not a super fan of Sunny Day Real Estate.
Me? No, I'm not. I don't never even listen to them before. Is that? Should I have ever said that?
No, it's okay.
I'm in trouble.
I'll forgive you this one time.
You're in Jeff trouble. It's more like a Jeff verbal warning.
Yeah. So Foo Fighters started out. Half of that band was from Sunday Day Real Estate.
I didn't know that for a long time, but
yeah. And Nate Mendel, who's the bass player of Foo Fighters, he's still part of the band. But William Goldsmith has been completely shit on by Dave Grohl, and he's essentially cock blocking a new Sunday Day Real Estate release. So
that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's why he's a dick, and he'll even tell you the way he dismissed William Goldsmith from Foo Fighters was a dick move, and he can't even explain why he did it, and he's never apologized, and he feels bad about it, but yet he still does stupid shit up like this. So I don't know. He just seems kind of two-faced to me. You know, he's all happy and funny on the this, and then whenever you hear another side of the story, you're like, that's kind of a dick move, man. Really? But anyway, but we need
I'm gonna jump back into With Teeth real quick.
Yeah, no, we got to.
And just say this.
Yeah, sorry.
This was the first Nine Inch Nails album that made me feel instead of made me feel a certain way. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
Like it kind of opened up reflection within me as a listener, more so than it just being shoved down my throat. Trent Reznor's twisted vision of life and reality. This was the first one where the songs actually were a little bit more ambiguous, a little bit more self-reflective. I mean, I'm sure it's all him, but I feel like the listener can pull a little bit more personal meaning out of each of the songs, and it's just an overall vibe. Yeah. And that's what I actually liked about this one, because sometimes Nine Inch Nails gets a little too dark all the time, and it can be kind of hard to break away from that, and I feel like this was very much a breakaway from that sound. And just kind of gave us a different view of Trent Reznor. Like it kind of humanized him a little bit more.
I think you're catching on to something there, because at this point in his life, I don't think he's quite as angry.
Yeah, this is when we got working out Trent Reznor, isn't it? Like you're like, oh, hey, what happened, man?
Yeah.
Where'd those muscles come from?
I went to the gym and got ripped.
Yeah, this is like I'm not on heroin. I'm in the gym. I'm kind of like, hey, I'm living a self-destructive lifestyle.
I got this sweet crew cut.
Yeah.
Well, and it feels like a detox.
Yeah,
like
it's very,
the record is like a
good,
filter. You know what I mean? Not okay. No pun intended. It's not like
no,
filter.
I never thought about that before, but it does have that sound to it. I mean, lyrically and sonically, the way it feels like very. A lot of songs feel very open and like a catharsis of some sort. Like it's not as dark. Like I'm still having these dark ideas and concepts, but I can present them in a clearer way. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's very clear. This album is very to the point. Like I said, it's very direct. I think these are rock songs.
Yeah,
Essentially.
and it's not the album that I should like, but it is one of the better ones. Like one of the ones that I really like the most.
Yeah,
because it just seems very sincere and not really up its own ass. Because I mean, 9 Inch Nails can get a little up Trent's own ass sometimes.
Yeah, I think this album is probably the most underrated out of all the stuff that he's put out.
I would agree.
Because whenever you stop and you go back and listen to it, you're like, damn, that's a lot of singles that made it onto the radio off of this album.
Again, yeah.
And
There's
you're
some
like,
jams out there.
Yeah, like Only is fucking awesome.
And that video is so cool with that, like the needle thing that you put your hand in. That's how I play it for my kids. They like it. They like to dance to Trent Reznor.
There you go.
And I like the video, and they think the video is cool, and I think the video is cool. I just think it's a cool concept. Very artistic, as we've talked about. He's very, very much about that.
Yes, he is.
And now an album that is factually incorrect. Year 0. This came out in 2007, Trent. You're wrong.
You're off by 2007. Just so we're clear. Maybe he's clearing it out. Maybe this is him starting over. Maybe. No.
Oh, man, that's really deep.
Yeah, right. I actually love this record. Again, it's one of those, like, everybody's like, what the fuck, man? Like, you're supposed to be, like, this music critic person. There's no way Year 0 is as good as Pretty Hate Machine. And I'm just like, it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, with his stuff. I guess I don't compare any of his albums together. Like I feel like it's just the next step, because you can see it's sounding. I feel like with T, things are starting to become different. This is another example of that, I think. But I always feel like everything he does is kind of in its own lane for that time.
Yeah, see, this is probably my least favorite, and it's not because of the quality of the songs. It's more of the subject matter. I would
agree.
I have a hard time when a quote-unquote famous person uses their platform to tell me how I should feel politically. I don't care what direction that is, because the whole concept of me listening to music, in a lot of instances, especially over the last, I'd say, 10 years in total, is to get away from that bullshit. That's the reason why I'm listening to your music, is because I don't want to have to think about it. It's escapism for me. And so for me, that was hard. I mean, but stuff like Survivalism and Capital G, I mean, it's not like they're bad songs. They're great fucking songs. I just want to, get away into another alternate reality. And I'm like, well, I guess it's time for me to go watch Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring again, because I need to get away from reality, not being told what I should be thinking about reality.
Well, Sauron is clearly Trump, right?
Tolkien had that premonition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're just living with blinders on if you don't think that's what it is.
And I want to continue to live with blinders on. No, I mean, and Trent Reznor will be the first one to tell you that he was having a hard time with the direction the United States was going, and the whole concept of this was the dystopian future perspective of where we were going to end up if we were going to continue with what our policies were under George W. Bush. I mean, that's the reason why he wrote it. And that just, for me personally, just not my cup of tea. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that love stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm just not one of them.
Well, can I offer you kind of a different perspective on that?
You're going to do it.
Yeah,
whether
go
he
for it.
says yes or no.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, so, strap in. But basically, for me, who was raised conservative, Republican, Christian, I think an album like this was actually really influential to me to be able to think about certain things that I hadn't really thought about before. See, I am a lyric guy. I'm all about lyrical content, and so I didn't think that Trent did this in such a way that was like super hateful. Like we talked about with Ministry, how it was all very super hateful and so out in front, and I criticized it for not really being artful enough and not being very thought-provoking. But I think in contrast, I think Year Zero is thought-provoking and does give somebody that's maybe only looked at things from one angle a different angle to view the world from. That doesn't mean I have to agree with everything that he says or what his perspective is, but having those perspectives, it's like having two eyeballs. Our eyes work best whenever we can take two angles and zero in and focus on one specific thing. And I think albums like this are necessary sometimes for people that maybe don't think about politics or don't think about certain world issues. I think it's really good to have that perspective. And sadly, I think sometimes it bleeds into music because I think some people aren't really looking for that perspective. But I mean, at the very least, if it can at least permeate their thinking a little bit and allow you to have two separate perspectives on something, to have your own unique perspective in the end. And that's what this album did for me back then when it came out. And I think that's why I have kind of a strong love for it.
Is this album an example of the artist needing to make an album that was politically charged, as opposed to this was 2007, this was the decade where every band had a song about the military, had a song about soldiers? Not saying it's a bad thing, but it was a trend. Yeah. Trent Reznor makes Year Zero. Did that need to happen? Is this the type of message that should have been sent by an entertainer or an artist, as opposed to, we support the military, here's our song about soldiers?
Yeah, I
Thank
can't.
You, Disturb.
I don't like either side of it. Just like the Toby Keith country, God bless USA kind of shit. I'm not interested in that either.
So politics is a 100% Geoff doesn't want it in music.
Yeah, I have zero interest. The whole principle for me in music, and it's probably why I like stuff like melodic death metal. Where they're in Sweden where they're talking about Norse gods and all kinds of shit like that.
In space.
I'm looking for that getaway. Why do I play video games? Why did I start playing video games? Because I was looking for an escape. Why do I read books? Because I'm trying to get away from reality. And I'm not going to discredit what Dan said in his opinion, about the perspective. For certain people, that is important, and I'm not going to deny that. But for me personally, it's just not what I looked for. It's a turnoff for me, but it doesn't mean that's a turnoff for everybody.
Isn't Year Zero far enough away from reality that it falls into the fantasy and the sci-fi?
No, because it only went out to 2021, I think it was. I think that's Year Zero is 2021, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like it's
it's basically tomorrow.
Yeah. It's not like it's 2,000 years away. I mean, it's literally something that was going to happen in our lifetime, and I'm like, no, I don't need to. I don't want to hear it. That's just me personally. And like I said, I'm not going to shit on somebody who has to, say that has to have that in their life, because there's a lot of people like that. They need to have they want to hear that perspective. I get enough of that from other sources. I don't need to hear it in my music. That's all I'm saying.
See, and I'm not to shit on Geoff because I understand his reasoning for it. It's just a difference in people, because like for me, the reason I listen to music, the reason I read books and stuff like that is to learn more and to grow, and to me, stuff like something like Year Zero enhances my reality more so than it makes me escape from it. It almost makes it a little bit more, like I said, it's all about angles and perspective, and that's what I like about lyrics like this. And I'm not talking about like Ministries, like whole fuck George W. Bush and all that stuff, like, because that's not thought provoking or artful really in any way. But, or the we'll put a boot in your ass and all that shit, on the other side. Like, none of it really, like, that all just sounds like noise to me. But something like Year Zero is kind of like, here's an interesting thought about what could happen if we continue with the same policies. And so I can read it and be like, huh, interesting. It doesn't mean I have to buy all of it, like, hook, line, and sinker, But I enjoyed kind of the futuristic dystopian stuff. I mean, I like, everybody loves Fallout, right? But, like, basically, I just enjoyed seeing it from that perspective. And whenever I approach music and entertainment and art, it is, for me, a way to kind of, without sounding all hippy-dippy, but kind of a way to expand, my understanding of how things work and how other people see how things work. And so that's why I'm, well, what are they talking about on this album? What's the lyrical content? And I'm sure some of that is just a carryover from only listening to Christian rock and making sure shit was okay for my parents to let me listen to. But, that's where it started. But, like, as an adult now, like, I look at something like this and I think it's valuable, whether I agree with it or not.
Yeah, for me, I think at the end of the day, it's my conspiracy theory side of me coming out. I don't like any kind of propaganda at all.
Old man hates the government, hates propaganda.
Yep, that is me. And in this day and age of social media and the internet, it just makes me hate it even more. And so, yes, my opinion is absolutely jaded, and I'm sure I'm just a curmudgeonly old man because of it, but I'm okay with that.
Now, let me give you another angle on Year Zero. This was also a fuck the industry sort of thing. This was I have problems with how things are, because he basically was like, I want to give the album, that was Year Zero, right? I want to give people the album and let them remix it and upload their remixes to our website and all of that. And the record label's like, fuck no, you can't do that. That's suicide. You're giving your shit away for free. You can't do that. We're not going to let people mess around with our copyrighted work. And Trent's like, well, technically it's my copyrighted work and I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. And they're like, well, we're trying to fucking run a business here, and so it was actually a really interesting kind of a sequel to what he had run into whenever he first started. Was people telling him, no, you can't do this, and him being like, well, I've always done it my way. Why does this have to be any different? And that's kind of what led to Nine Inch Nails being more of an independent type of thing after this, because it was just like, it was too much. Like, everybody played by his rules, and then finally people were like, look, we've let you go as far as we can let you go, but we can't have you just giving your music to people that we paid, to help you record and and all of that. And it was a huge fucking problem where he was basically telling people to pirate the album.
Yep. And then that's eventually what led us into Ghosts 1 through 4.
Jeff, this is exactly what you wanted from the last record, because do you know what Trent Reznor is talking about on this album?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
It was called You're Welcome, Jeff. Ghosts 1 through 4.
I think Dan said it best many years ago when he said Ghosts, a.k.a. Trent Reznor's complete library of samples.
Here, take this and do whatever you want with it. Yeah, it's kind of like, use these for whatever. Maybe don't tell me, but sample it. It's interesting. I didn't think about it in the context of his discography until you were talking about the political nature, if you will, of Year Zero, and how he said a lot of things that he was probably thinking, and then essentially said absolutely nothing on his next body of work.
Maybe that's the ultimate artistic statement.
Like, I have nothing to say right now. I've said it all in my last album. Not ready to. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting perspective I never thought about until just listening to you guys dialogue about it.
Where's Trent? He's in his room. He's not talking right now.
You know what's fun? Yeah, because you're right on, because like there was no fanfare, there was no publicity. It just magically appeared.
Yeah, it was there.
Pay what you want. That was one of the other cool things on this album. Is
first one was free.
Yeah, and to get the additional stuff, it was just like that's kind of like Humble Bundle for Trent Reznor
in 2007.
I wonder if he was maybe even just toying with the idea of like, well, here's some stuff I've worked on that doesn't have any lyrical content. I'm not sure how I want to start to release music in the future, but let's try this with little consequence if it doesn't work. Like, this isn't like anything I feel like is majorly important context or musically. You know what I'm saying? Like, he might have just said, we're in a transitional era. in the music industry. I said a lot on that last album. How about I say nothing and then just test the waters on, free releases or, pay what you want or, so this is the first time I'm thinking of this album or these albums in this context of that. So I'm just thinking out loud, basically.
Well, this was 2007 also.
Yeah.
High quality MP3s were 192 kilobits on iTunes. Everybody had 128 kilobits on their iPods. Some people had 96 kilobits on their laptops.
Fuck you.
In the front seat of their car.
Fuck you. I couldn't afford an iPod.
And Trent Reznor is selling lossless, high-quality audio on his website of this album called Ghosts.
Yeah, but with no real songs.
So what point was he trying to make?
No, I see.
He did it again on the next one, which we'll get to.
Maybe he was trying to make some kind of point, but these albums don't flow together, in my opinion. Let's put that disclaimer out there.
It's definitely background music for people that like industrial.
Yeah. It is, and I don't mind it. I don't even think it's industrial, to be honest. This is the least industrial thing he's done.
That is correct. I would agree with that. It's four EPs, and you just put this on and just chill out or do some shit around the house. This is not an album or albums or EPs, whatever the hell you want to call them, that I would say are your focal point while you're listening to them. Maybe the first go around or every once in a while, but this is not a regular listen where it's your focal point. This is your put some music on in the background.
I'm noticing there's I don't know if this might have been the first time he started to work with Atticus Ross. I don't know how much involvement they had before, but I'm just seeing writing credits to him at Reznor and Ross, and that obviously became a very big part of Nine Inch Nails going forward. So I don't know how much involvement he had with Atticus Ross prior to this, but I'm just catching it. And again, this is not an album or a set of albums I was hugely connected with at the time. So I'm kind of just taking it in a couple different directions in my head. And that's another angle I'm seeing that might have been more of an experimentation process in his discography,
I'm going to only say that this was called Nine Inch Nails because of the name and the sellability of it, because this should have just been called Trent Reznor or something along the... I mean, I realize Nine Inch Nails has always been Trent Reznor, so in calling it just Trent Reznor, you're basically calling it Nine Inch Nails. I get that argument, but it doesn't sound similar enough to anything that has been really recorded by Nine Inch Nails up to this point. And the songs are really short. They're a minute and a half each or something like that. Some of them go on longer than that, but it definitely was background music for me. And I had no actual connection with it at all. Again, being strong on lyrics, there's no lyrics by definition. It's not a song then, And
there's nothing here for Dan.
Right. I just couldn't find a whole lot to come back to. I mean, I think it sounds pretty. I could say that about it, but it's not and I'm trying really hard not to shit on people that make instrumental music, but
hey, that's me,
right? But it's different, right? Because your songs, Eric, are actually compositions and have beginnings and endings, and you can see where you were coming from, transitioning into certain parts. You're not just here's a minute and a half of an idea.
Yes,
and
here's
that's a song.
I'm gonna hold it down for 3 minutes.
Correct, and that's what we had on Ghost. So it's not it sounds nice in the sense that a musical genius has composed it.
So just to correct my earlier statement about Atticus Ross in his first involvement
with teeth.
I'm seeing it goes back to the with teeth era that they were working together. So maybe a little off base there, but maybe a sign of things to come.
I'm gonna say this is Trent's low point.
Yeah, I might even say coming up to the slip when we get to that point that there's a little bit of a dip.
Yeah,
in
we're
that
here,
right there.
2008. I like the slip. I downloaded it the day he put it up on his website, and then paid him I think $9 for it because that's what Radiohead did on In Rainbows. What do you want to pay for the album?
0.
Damn.
This is my least favorite album.
Is it because it's trying to be a rehash?
I couldn't get into it myself, just for what it is,
Well, it's trying and failing at being a rehash. I think when he was writing this, he's like, this is fucking safe as shit.
Yeah, that, you know what? That word is exactly how I would describe it. It just exists for the reason of, I should probably put an album out.
Maybe that's why he didn't want to charge people money for it.
Again, maybe he's trying to just see how this new era of releasing music works. Like, well, here's some songs I don't think are great, but will work in the context of an album. And I'm 9 Inch Nails, and I'll sell X amount of copies, and I'll tour it. It'll be great, and I'll play the hits. And
wasn't this a serious attempt at being an independent artist, though?
Oh, was that? Yeah, you know what? You might be right.
Yeah, because this is put out by the Knoll Corporation. Hey, Joe, can you turn my headphones down just a tad? my ears are buzzing, and I don't.
Yeah, I got a lot of snare in my headphones too.
No, my ears are all jacked up, so like they buzz.
I thought he just hated the album. It was like, turn that shit off. While I'm talking.
No, it's not that. It's just my ears are just starting to act weird. No, you're right. If he does this and he wanting to do something safe as shit, that's fine, because it was put out by the Knoll Corporation. He is trying to make some bucks. So he's going to try to go back to the well instead of doing what makes Trent Reznor great, which is be artistic, creative, and put himself out there. I don't feel like he did that with this album at all.
I remember when it first came out, and a friend of mine was like, what do you think of that new 9 Inch Nails album? And I was like, it sounds like really bad, Pretty Hate Machine. He's like, that's not even possible. And I was like, oh, it's possible, man. I listened to the whole fucking thing like twice, because the first time I listened to it, I was like, well, this is probably really brilliant. I just don't get it. And I listened to it again, and I was like, no matter what you say about an album, how brilliant it may be or may not be, or whatever the story is behind it, if I don't enjoy what I'm listening to, like it's like it has a superficial similarity to previous 9 Inch Nails material, which is where I came up with the whole safe line. So I think he's thinking, well, if people like 9 Inch Nails, they're going to like this record. But the problem is the elements are not arranged in such a way that is really enjoyable for 9 Inch Nails fans. This is not what we've come to expect from him. And so to hear it so blatantly, like we're going to go back to the old sound, it doesn't connect, because those old songs were brilliant and they were very well composed. Whereas these were composed with the mindset of, well, people like the way this other thing sounded. Is not the same thing as I've got this feeling in my heart that I want to translate into music. I want people to be able to hear how I feel. I don't feel like that was the approach with the Slip. I think the Slip was literally just like, let's just put something out that sounds like the old stuff, and hopefully people will still be on board. And I think that was probably because Ghost was so weird, and he felt like he needed to put out something that was similar sounding to 9 Inch Nails to keep people on board.
This was Trent quit his job and decided to start his own business. He got his money. He'd been saving for a while. He walked in on Monday morning at 8 o'clock and said, all right, let's make a record. Okay, yeah, let me loop this drum part. And, okay, I got this guitar sound. Yeah, this sounds great. This is going to work awesome. All right, so, yeah, now we're going to go on tour. Wait, Trent, you have to get that pressed and do promos and do radio interviews and talk about your new album. Otherwise, people aren't going to know anything about it. No, it's fine. They'll know. They'll find me. How are they going to do that, Trent? Well, they did it before. No, you had a record label doing all of that for you.
Machine.
Well, fuck it. We'll just put it up on the website then.
Right.
And that's what he did.
Pretty much.
I don't know who said it first, but in my head it's Dan, because things like this are usually said by him. Trent Reznor figured out at some point that the machine works for a reason, and there is value with a record label. The record label actually does things for the artist. Yes, artists are taken advantage of. Yes, that does happen. When you do the math, they've been getting screwed for decades. But there's a huge difference between Neil Young, who plays music that is arguably enjoyable by more people, than Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails. That is a niche audience if there ever has been one. And yes, some of these songs are radio friendly and everybody knows them and everybody loves them. But you can't make this work in the masses on your own in 2008. And the next record, Hesitation Marks, he's on Columbia.
I love this album, just to say it.
Thank you. I'm not the only one. I fucking love this album.
When I was working on my Ane Croft EP, Solitary Land, shout out to myself. How vain is that?
That's the only way to fly, baby.
I was listening a lot to this album and The Fragile. Those two albums were really kind of influenced my headspace in terms of writing things that were more long form instead of, you've heard it, Dan. Things that are more like a long form idea that flushes itself out over the course of 3 or 4 or 5, 6 minutes. And like stuff on this album where it was like, you kind of alluded to it a second ago, Joe. Here's a drum beat, I'm going to loop it, and it kind of carries itself through the song. I think he perfected that idea that he was trying for on The Slip on this album, because the song builds, but the drum samples and loops and tracks don't change. But the music builds and turns itself into something by the end of it that is, a piece. And between this and The Fragile, those two albums to me were big time in my head in how to do that and trying to do something like that in my own brain. Like, here's one idea. How long can I stretch it and add to it and come to a conclusion at the end of it? And I think he did that a lot on this album in a song structure perspective. Copy of and Came Back Haunted. Obviously, those are two of the bigger songs on there, but those two songs are badass. All Time Low are these are the whole album. I dig it, but maybe that's because it came from a time after The Slip and after Ghosts, and it was like, you kind of wanted it, and it was finally, I feel like he hit his mark that he was trying for. But cool album, one of the bigger albums to me, one of the ones I like the most. So
yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. It was a coming back to form for me, and Copy of has been my jam for like 5 years now.
It's so good. It's such a good song. I just like the way that he plays with the lyrics and the vocals. Like I don't know, it's just cool. It's very Trent, Copy of a copy of a copy of a.
Yeah, so. I every time this song comes on, dude, I don't care.
It's just a good song.
It just jam it, and I'm just like I said, I think it's a coming back to form. This is a fantastic album, and Copy of is one of my all-time favorite Nine Inch Nails songs.
Again, it's a single. I mean, it's a song that was put forth from the album to represent the album. Like all of his greatest singles before that from albums that were, highly regarded, the singles stand up on their own, even if it's a single, and you never get sick of it. So kind of back to the same thing here on this album where he was doing on The Fragile and Pretty Hate Machine and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, this is the Nine Inch Nails that younger me, younger me starts off with the kind of the scary, Downward Spiral and Pretty Hate Machine. But I'm an adult now, and now it sounds like Trent's an adult now too. And that's what I like about this record, is that it has a little bit more of a variation, like the type of growth that you would experience living a regular life, and all the different experiences melded together for a record that was not trying to repeat the past. It was actually forging forward with his sound. And, I found this record to be somewhat relaxing. Yeah. And agreed. It's like a huge chill out record for me. And
yes.
I get shit done when I listen to this record. and I love that about it. I love that it's more mature, and I don't mean that in a music reviewer say, oh, it's such a mature album, but I really mean it. Like this is if you're a lifetime fan of a band, this is where you feel like the artist is growing with you.
That's a good point. Yeah, I feel like it felt right. It feels good. Still listen to it. I feel like I understand it. It makes sense. I know where he was coming from. It's a chill out album that has some energy to it, but yeah, it doesn't feel like it never gets super aggressive lyrically or sonically. But it does accomplish a structural goal of a song and an album. But it feels great from start to finish. Put it on, get shit done. Yeah,
Good job, guys.
I've vacuumed the house to this on the TV, and the kids have been dancing. So
many a time.
Yeah, I might have done that this past week actually.
I've done it. I do it. I try to think what can I put on that's not. I try to influence them and introduce them to music they can get down to that's not Taylor Swift, and they don't know. I'm just saying, it's funny. Both my kids and my son especially I played him a couple songs from, and I don't know how you feel about this band, but the newest Enter Shikari record, my son loves. There's 2 songs on there. When you put one of those songs on, the smile, he's never smiles like that in his whole life. I don't know what it is, but I try to introduce him to there's other things out there that are cool you guys can get down to. So
yeah, actually, I like especially a lot of the earlier Enter Shikari stuff. I'm a pretty big fan of. So yeah, I'm down with that.
It's a tangent, but that's the kind of thing I like to do when I'm doing something around the house. I just here's this. this is what I want to listen to. I feel like it does accomplishes the goal that you guys can burn energy off to. And yeah, Hesitation Marks is one of those albums.
How old does he have to be before you put on the self-titled Coal Chamber?
I don't know. I say it to myself all the time, or I say either say me loco or you loco. One of the two. It's both apply in this house. It's either my kids are crazy or I'm the crazy one. They've heard some crazy stuff.
Bad Witch.
Ooh, Bad Witch. So this is one that I'm, the least familiar with.
Yeah, I'd say I'm the same on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it was like a day one I listened to it. I was like, it's pretty cool. And then, like, because I was, like, balls deep into this podcast at this point. So, like, I probably, back in June of this year, I probably had, like, 400 albums by a band to listen to, And so I didn't get to give it really the attention that it deserved, probably.
Wasn't it like an EP before this or something that him and Atticus Ross did? I don't even see it listed, but there was something they did.
They did a
Bad Violence.
Yes, that's what it was.
Violence.
Yeah, Bad Violence. Okay.
I feel like this is kind of like the culmination of that idea, like, or not a culmination, but like that. It's still that. He's still in that era.
Yeah.
So, and I like that.
Kind of jazzy on this one, which I'm not sure how I feel about because I don't really like jazz very much, but.
This is straight up bitches brew in Dan's eyes.
Yeah. it's not that bad, but yeah, I just said bitches brew is bad. Come at me. But
you're wrong.
I'm sure I am. I just don't like jazz music. I don't get it, and I don't think incorporating jazz elements into your music makes you more intelligent. But whatever.
Fair enough.
I can get down with that theory.
But at the same time, I don't think that's what Trent was doing here.
Maybe because I can't do it.
Right. Well, that's dude. I'm a vocalist. That literally my whole career hinges on I can't do what everybody else can do.
Yeah. I don't like. I'm sure my life has been like, well, that sucks. And then I go in my basement, I pick up my guitar, and I go, yeah, I can't play that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when you're alone, you can only be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I can't do that. So that's why I don't like it.
I don't think that's what Nine Inch Nails was doing here. I don't think they have to prove anything to anybody at this point, except for us right now. I think that this was a really cool fucking record, and it was a very there were a lot of weird out moments on it for me. And it was just kind of a genuine pleasure to listen to because I wasn't ever really sure where they were going.
Yeah. I think that's because you're getting double vision, essentially. It's not just Trent Reznor steering the ship anymore.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why is weird as somebody who always advocates change, because that's normally like my position on the podcast. I don't like it as much this time around. I want my old Trent back. I guess is what I'm getting at. I feel like this is definitely more of the soundtrack feel that we were talking about previously. I kind of got that vibe again on this album. There was a little bit of it was kind of soundtracky for me. I feel like this you could write it's very easy to write a cheesy action flick to this soundtrack. That's how I viewed it.
So we really are getting classic Nine Inch Nails then. We got Hesitation Marks, and now we got Bad Witch. It's the Fragile and With Teeth all over again. Only now it's the next step in the sound and the artistic expression.
I don't like it as much as I like With Teeth, but
yeah, I think With Teeth is criminally underrated. I would agree with that.
If anything comes out of this, I would say that that album deserves to be pushed up higher than it might be.
Yeah, this album and maybe it's because I need to listen to it more.
It's true, it's newer. Yeah,
I've only listened to it probably 6 times, and for me, that's generally not enough when it comes to a band that I truly love. To whenever they're really going to go off on a tangent to form a proper opinion.
It's so funny. A guy said to me the other day, was like, you guys always shit on the last album. They're like, I listen to every single one of your podcasts and you guys are always down on the last album. And I was like, well, that's not objectively true, but he's like, is it just because you're getting to the end of your long ass marathon session? Because like we do that, even
tired of it,
even with a band like Nine Inch Nails that we all know and love. Like it was still like anything else, at the beginning of that week, it was like, all right, Pretty Hate Machine, go. And then, you go all the way to the end. You go on this journey with the artist. And this is one of the few times where I would say that I feel like that Trent Reznor has a little bit new blood in him. and that creativity that we've come to expect from him over the years really shines here. I mean, obviously Bad Witch is not the greatest album that Nine Inch Nails has ever put out. I mean, nobody can touch the Downward Spiral. But like I said earlier, it doesn't have to be that. You know, it doesn't have to be a repeat of the past or even try to achieve the greatness. Because, like, what is greatness? The greatness that we're all talking about is just our own personal memories of listening to that album compared to how things are now. You know, so, like if I listen to the Downward Spiral right now for the very first time, I would not have the same emotional connection with it that I had back then. And there's just nothing, there's no replicating that.
I was just going to say Bad Witch in terms of its place in the discography might make more sense according to the way that his discography has moved along, and he's at his peaks and valleys, and one thing makes sense after you hear the next thing. So I wonder what's next, what he has in mind for the next set of songs. If he's working more exclusively with Atticus Ross, does the next album inform what he was trying to do with Bad Witch more? You know, I mean, that would be my take on the Bad Witch stuff, because again, I don't have much experience with listening through it, but it could make more sense when you hear, 2 or 3 years from now what he does again.
Yeah, to hit on to what Dan was saying, I with some of the critical feedback we've gotten, I've actually made it a point to, I listen to the discographies at least twice at a bare minimum whenever we do one of these episodes. I normally listen to it 3, 4, or 5 times. Now I actually try to, I don't actually listen to them in chronological order as much anymore. And it's mainly because I don't want to get to that last album and be burnt out. I'm trying to make sure that I give every album a fair shake. So I do kind of jump around a little bit. And this one still fell a little short for me, even with doing that. And it was easy because I didn't have to listen to any of the other albums, because I listened to them so much. I mean, they're, Nine Inch Nails is part of my regular playlist in general. I own more physical media of their stuff than I do anybody else who is not John, Paul, and Ringo. So, it wasn't hard for me to say, okay, I'm going to put all this other stuff on the back burner and focus on Bad Witch. And it just, for me, it just didn't work. But like you said, he does tend to, be able to fill in the empty spaces by the next album, because they a lot of times stuff works together with what he releases. So maybe that will happen, and when I come back and listen to it again after his next release, I won't feel so negative about Bad Witch.
Final thoughts on Nine Inch Nails, Dan?
Oh, well, being predominantly a metal guy, I feel like I've kind of given Nine Inch Nails a pass on a lot of things. And I think that's totally cool, because that was never the intention, was to be, extreme. At least not in the sense that I'm talking when it refers to heavy music. But there's a certain oppressive heaviness to Nine Inch Nails, especially the early stuff, that I love. It's what attracted me to the band initially. And I do like that, being an adult and not being angry all the time. Not all the time. Not unless we're talking about like Mushroom Head or In Flames or something like that. But I'm not generally angry, and so I'm not the person that fell in love with those early albums anymore. So to have kind of the albums that we had later on in the catalog, the last 2, definitely makes me feel good to know that the band is growing with me, and I can't wait to see where they're going to go in the future.
Oh, there's not much to say that I haven't said already. The biggest thing for me is that I grew up with Trent. I mean, he more than any other artist probably shaped how I listen to music and my desire to listen to an entire album instead of just a single track, that made it onto the radio. He made me want to go for the deep cuts, because he has there's so many layers to his music. There's so much to listen to, and even at an early stage, I just like the fact that every time you listen to it, if you want, you can focus on one particular thing, and you'll pick up something that you didn't necessarily hear before, because it's just like a wall of sound. And I love musicians who actually do that take the time to fill in the with something with more than just white noise at those empty spaces and try to make everything complete. He is the master of that. I mean, he's who perfected it, in my opinion, and made it relevant for other artists to really, have all these tracks going over and over and over and over. And you're like, my God, how many layers is actually here? I love that stuff. And so that's probably what is the most important thing for me, is that I love what he did for me as a teenager and how I was able to grow with him. And I have an emotional connection to his music that I don't with a lot of other stuff that I listen to.
Erik Hall, final thoughts on Nine Inch Nails.
I would agree with what both of you guys have said, and probably, I've mentioned it quite a bit as well, but just in terms of the way I perceive music, the way that some things might be difficult to understand musically, I can thank my being able to understand them probably to what Trent Reznor did with a lot of stuff. To me, most specifically, The Fragile was an album that was a piece of music that is most, easily and best appreciated in the context of itself in its full form. I've always liked that kind of stuff, and I think I owe some of that understanding to being able to understand what he was doing and understand that a song can stand on its own but can work in the context of an album. In terms of electronic music, it's something I've always been drawn to. I still love it. Sometimes there's all kinds of music I still listen to, I think because of what I was able to kind of pull out from Nine Inch Nails records, just from hearing that kind of stuff for the first time. That would be probably the first time I would have ever heard anything industrial, anything electronic, anything really dark and aggressive. A lot of that comes from what I heard Trent doing, and it gave me an appreciation as a music listener, as a musician, as a guitar player, as someone who tries to write their own songs and just tries to do their own thing. I appreciate what he did, and I've had emotional connections with his music since I was, I'd say 18 to 20 in that time frame when I first heard The Fragile and beyond. And it's always been there, and every couple of years it might change to, the way my head's working or what I can gain out of it. And like you guys have all said, it changes with the way you are as you grow up, and but the music's still there, and you can still pull stuff out of it. Whether or not it's something you've heard 100 times, you can still hear it once and go, I didn't know that was in there, or I didn't know that I appreciated it as much as I did. So I guess I would just say I'm appreciative of the fact that he was able to, step out and do his own thing. And I've taken a lot of influence in many aspects from that. So blah, blah, blah. Sorry for the rambling.
There is an entire generation of pop music fans. They know who Michael Jackson is. In the 80s, he was the guy. I think Trent Reznor is the guy to fans of rock music, alternative, heavy metal. He is either somebody that you know, somebody that you love listening to, you think Nine Inch Nails is one of the best bands ever, or you've heard his influence in other artists. I can't wait to talk about Marilyn Manson and talk about Antichrist Superstar and how part of the reason that record sounds so dark and has the tone that it has is because Trent Reznor touched it. He's done soundtrack work. I love listening to the Lost Highway soundtrack. Actually, Lost Highway, we need to watch that on Movie Mosh. Dan, can we put that on the list?
Do it.
He has a way of touching sound and making it feel a certain way. And nobody can do what Trent Reznor does with sound, with music. It really does sound mechanical. And one of his best qualities as a writer, producer, engineer, insert all of his titles, is that he's not perfect. Some people think The Slip is, in fact, a slip. Maybe he was calling it what it was. I really shouldn't have quit the record labels, guy. I really shouldn't have quit the record label. Maybe I slipped up here. He might be a lot deeper than we all think he is, and we already think he's one of the deepest guys in this kind of music. I can't tell you that you need to go listen to Nine Inch Nails because you already are. You've heard Closer. You've heard Head Like a Hole. You've heard March of the Pigs. These are all songs that we like, and I don't want it to stop. Dan, what's your album of the week?
My album of the week is Slave to Nothing by Fit for a King.
Nice.
I had to balance this all out with like some just straight up bro shit. You know?
That's some good bro shit, though, man.
It is some good bro shit.
Say Texas represent.
There you go.
Geoff, what about you?
All right, I'm going to cheat because it's an EP. It's God Loves Underwater, self-titled EP. Since we were talking about Rick Rubin earlier, that's a Rick Rubin produced EP. Love that stuff.
Eric, what's your album of the week?
I've listened to this a couple times this week. It's been a while since I've listened to it, and my personal and spiritual journey the last few months has really, it's been undergoing quite a change. So an album that I've always enjoyed, but I've been listening to with Shivering Hearts, We Wait by Blindside the last couple days, pretty much this week, and I forgot how much I really enjoyed that album, and I've always liked Blindside a lot.
We do too.
But, and I'm like, I kind of was like, I can't believe this album came out in 2011. Like that's when that album came out, and it's 7 years old, and I still enjoy it. And I kind of wish they would put something else out. I don't know if they ever will, but yeah, that would be my album of the week. That's kind of like, oh shit, this makes more sense to me right now.
It's not much to say when you're a monster on the radio.
I know it, right?
You know?
Aren't we all?
Just saying. Hey guys, Eric has a instrumental project or band. Which would you prefer, a band or a project?
I would say it's a project in the context that exists on that album, and it is more of a band sense in what it's going with forwards in terms of musician involvement.
Very cool. It's called Ane Croft. You can go on Bandcamp. Throw Eric a couple bucks for it. He deserves it. It's good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on this episode and talking to us for 2 hours about Nine Inch Nails.
I've been, like I said, I've wanted to have this conversation for a while. So when you mentioned it a couple of days ago or last weekend, I was like, you know what? Or it was a couple of days ago. I thought, man, this is a good time to get back into the podcast game. It's been a while since I've just talked music or anything in a recorded fashion. So I was excited to do it. I'm glad we were able to put this together, and definitely to do it on one of my favorite musicians. It was definitely fun, and I'm glad we did it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime, man.
We shot the shred to shit.
Oh no. I just realized too, we totally forgot to ask Joe what his album of the week was.
AFI, Decemberunderground.
Ooh, good album.
That was a good one.
It's a band I go back and forth on, but we talked about cover songs a lot in the beginning of this episode. They are one of the few bands that have done a Nine Inch Nails song, Head Like a Hole, and did that motherfucker justice.
Yeah, they did.
It's
really
worthy.
Good.
You are worthy. And on that note, this has been episode 97 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money.